BC Hydro's Site C dam has been controversial for a long, long time, and it's going to be controversial again today because there's been a new study about the technical problems and the financial cost that that's going to add to the project. It's prepared by Robert McCullough of McCullough Research down in Portland, Oregon, and I'm going to be talking to him, so welcome to the interview, Robert.
Thank you very much.
Now, let's start this. We've got a lot to unpack in 10 minutes. So please give me an overview of the study, kind of hitting the high points.
Absolutely. Site C has been on the books now for over 50 years. It is a project that is enormous institutional inertia in British Columbia. But just one paragraph background, it was one of 5 projects: Site A, Site B, Site C, Site D, Site E. The basic technology of hydroelectric generation is you want narrow, rocky passes where you can dam and build a large reservoir behind them. That's true at Williston. That's at the top of the stack for the Peace River. It's not true as we move downstream. And that's why of the 5 sites, we're back to only Site C. Site C has been disappointing. The banks are not stable. It's the worst possible thing that it can happen to you. And then approximately 10 months ago, we discovered that the government had warned that the base below the dam is shale and may not be stable as well. And so we're expecting a major study by the government that will tell us how much that costs. Unfortunately, there is no study. And the farmers who live in the area contacted us and said, well, let's give it your best shot of what we expect to see when that study comes out.
Okay, well, I've got to say, I mean, the technical issues, the engineering challenges that this project faced are not unknown. I mean, they were known ahead of time. And it seems like they were either underestimated or poorly estimated. And then there are some issues with the financial numbers, which we'll get into. Have we got a problem with BC hydro management? Are British Columbians being misled?
Well, we do, unfortunately. 3 years ago, we had a similar problem where the bank started to collapse in the excavation. They filed testimony at the commission that the project was on budget and on schedule. That was not true. And by the end of the commission process, we discovered that it was not on budget or on schedule. And eventually we saw Deputy Minister Don Wright, someone I actually like a lot, taking over the discussion. It's his work that we now base all this on. But the sad thing about this is these are very expensive projects. They're problematic. The best sites are developed first. Those are the ones that give us the least trouble. We're not talking about Grand Coulee in Oregon or Williston in British Columbia. We're talking about a downstream project with lots of tectonic issues.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, so the stability of the right bank, as I understand it, has always been a challenge, well known. And you point out in your report that they may have used the wrong concrete, a concrete that wouldn't stand up well to seismic activity. Have I got that right?
You do. There's some questions in the peer-reviewed literature by engineers and scientists about whether the compacted concrete technology is appropriate for a site that faces earthquake issues.
And so that's one thing. And what about the issue of why the bank is unstable and how they're going to get around that? Is this a technical mistake, an engineering mistake, or should these things have been anticipated?
I think actually it's an inexperienced mistake. In Canada, the most experienced hydroelectric developer is Hydro-Quebec. And even they have had problems at La Romaine in this direction. And so then we're talking about BC Hydro, who have not made a major hydroelectric development for many years. And so they're learning as they go along. The best rule for this is to start scared as hell and stay scared as hell. When we compare what they've done to what the Army Corps of Engineers has done along the Columbia River, they have been a lot less cautious than the Army Corps of Engineers. And that means when the Army Corps of Engineers has built something or repaired something, they take a lot more time. They're willing to wait a year to see if a repair works before they go further. That, unfortunately, is the right answer. And the reality is we figured this stuff out halfway through the excavation and then discovered that our guesses were wrong.
Well, let's talk about another area of trouble, and that is the financial end of this thing. And you included a number in your study that frankly was a bit gobsmacking because I hadn't run across it before. And apparently, see if I get this right, BC Hydro has got $5 billion of interest rate derivatives on the market, and they've lost $1 billion already. And that number was not included in the last update when the last cost recalculation was done. Have I got that correct, Robert?
Exactly correct. So
well, I'm sorry, but that seems to me to be bordering on malfeasance.
well, it's an oh my God moment. So let me just clarify where we are. They plan to spend $8 billion at the outset. And they said to themselves, let's lock in that interest rate, pretty much the same way we would do on a home mortgage. And they went to the commission, got permission to do that. That was in 2016. Not much debate because the scale of it really wasn't well understood. The reporting of where they've been has been indifferent. The last report admitted the $1 billion loss. But the reality is the following. Though British Columbia is a wonderful place, like Oregon and Washington, it's small scale by the standards of Wall Street or London or Tokyo. So going out with a $5 billion interest rate hedge is very unique, very large scale. But moreover, we talked about inexperience. This is not something that BC Hydro has ever done before. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, no Canadian or US utility has ever done anything of this scale. These are not liquid markets. It's not like a home mortgage. In a home mortgage, you call your bank, you can call the bank across the street, you can call the credit union. This is a situation where you have to fly to New York, London, or Tokyo and actually go negotiate nose to nose with some of the smartest bankers in the world. It's beginning to look like that they did not do very well. At the time, they estimated their total interest expense would be about $1.2 billion. They've almost lost all of that in the derivatives where we stand, and they're not yet halfway through the project. So if interest rates fall in world markets, which we expect because we're in the COVID recession, they could easily lose another billion, or they could have possibly lost more in the hedge than they would have paid if they had done nothing. How to account for this in the project costs? In my report, I left it open just because we don't know the answer. But the reality is, if you're in an illiquid market and you want to step out of that, it may be much worse than simply the apparent value. You may actually lose your shirt.
Well, speaking of losing your shirt, let's talk about the cost per megawatt hour of this project. So as I recall, BC Hydro initially calculated around $67, $68 per megawatt hour. That's low. When I've interviewed other economists who said now that it should be around $80 a megawatt hour, because BC Hydro amortized that the cost of the project over 100 years, which nobody else would do, because the usual practice is to amortize it over the length of the time, the longest length of time you can get for a bond, which is 40 years. And so it seems like already they're playing, right from the beginning, they were playing, you know, with the numbers.
Well, the 100-year lifetime is probably not acceptable to the British Columbia Utility Commission. They've said that in the past. As a general rule, again, I'm going to do home mortgage. If you went to the bank and you said, I'd like a 100-year mortgage, they would look at you sharply, figuring correctly you weren't going to live that long. 100 years in our industry and our technology is a preposterous period. We are in the midst of a massive change over to renewables. Over the last decade, the price of renewables has fallen from $300 per megawatt hour down to $30. The price of Site C has quadrupled over the planning period. Is now probably more like $100. And so trying to push assumptions out 100 years is simply preposterous. 100 years ago, most people in our world were riding horses. I mean, this is a very long period. We had women with bustles. I'm not even sure what a bustle is, but I suspect we're not going to have any more of those either.
Right. And I think the key point here is $100 a megawatt hour, which is really expensive. If you went to sell that power on the mid-Columbian market, which is the spot market down in the Western United States, you'd get about $39 or $40 for it. The cost of generating wind in BC is estimated to be around $50 and falling to $40 by 2030. This seems to be, I don't know, financial madness?
Well, it's the wrong answer. And let me make one point that some people don't understand. The Mid-Columbia market, the hub, is listed as a forward market in both the Chicago Board of Trade and the International Continental Exchange. And what that means is that we can buy or sell that 2024 power today. We're not guessing at the price. You open the paper, you look at the price, you pick up the phone or send an email, and you make the deal. So we're gambling on an unknown $100 per megawatt hour in Site C against a real life $40 price that you can actually close, take to the bank tomorrow.
Robert, thank you very much for this. I don't doubt that we'll be talking to you again because this issue is not going away. It only appears to be getting worse. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you. Have a good day.